me, the problem with intelligent design, the most fundamental one, is that even if it were true, you basically solved the problem of explaining Earth's creatures at a cost that is a million times worse in terms of parsing. If it's hard to explain a tiger through Darwinian processes, it is that much harder yet to explain a tiger design. So the point is, sooner or later you're going to reach for Darwinism because there's literally no competitor. There's nothing else anyone has ever said that could even in principle produce living creatures.
And this is coming from a perspective of someone who understands evolutionary biology rather than someone who's coming from a theological perspective.
Right.
Where they're looking for an intelligent design without understanding that these mechanisms have essentially been mapped other than this one.
Yeah. I mean, it is, you know, we humans are not built to understand evolution. Because in general, it's not very useful to understand. So our minds are not structured this way.
Do you think this mechanism is universal in the cosmos?
Oh, in one way, yes, because, let's put it this way. I think we teach evolution badly. There's a process that I would call selection, which accounts for all pattern in the universe. Right? Some differential force that arranges the size of the pebbles on a beach, it arranges the galaxies, it accounts for the number of stars of each different type, the elements. Selection produces all of that structure in the prebiotic universe. It becomes adaptive in the biological sense when you add to selection heredity. Right? When the patterns in the universe become capable of biasing the universe into producing more of themselves. Right? Red dwarf stars do not bias the universe into producing more red dwarf stars. There's no heredity. So there's a number of red dwarf stars that is the result of selection, but it is not the result of any hereditary process. The thing that's different about us critters is that heredity allows the adaptations to stack on top of each other so that they increasingly bias the universe into producing more of whatever they are. Right? A bat is biasing the universe into producing more bats. So there is no reason at all to think that new game that happens when heredity gets attached to selection is limited to Earth in any way. Now, it could be that it is so difficult for it to happen that it just hasn't gotten around to it anywhere else.
You're aware of that asteroid that they mined a piece of and found amino acids on it and all that?
No. I mean,
I'm
dimly aware of it, but I didn't look into it and I don't know what it means.
Well, it's sort of, it backs up the idea of panspermia.
Well, it could, or it could mean that these components assemble themselves more commonly than we would guess. If I had to guess, I would say it's very likely that there's a lot of life in the universe. I don't think there's anything so special about the Earth that it would be the lone example or even a very rare example. You know, there aren't a lot of Earth-like planets nearby, but there are bound to be a lot of Earth-like planets in a universe as big as this one is. I mean, one of the things about the universe is that it absolutely defies human comprehension in terms of how big it is. So I would guess there's a lot of life out there. Why we don't hear from it, that's an interesting question. It may be that it, you know, as soon as it gets around to communicating in ways that we can listen in and blow itself up.
Or it could be it turns into AI and it doesn't have any desire to travel.
It knows better than to reach out.
Well, the idea is that it no longer becomes biological, so it no longer has all of the needs. Like if we have all these different Darwinian mechanisms that are enabling us to become human beings, if we eventually create artificial intelligence and if we merge and become sort of cyborgs, if we lose all of our human desires, all of our needs, all of our animal instincts to procreate and reproduce our genes and carry on, if we become essentially, or we stop being viable and this new thing emerges as the apex creature on Earth, a silicon-based life form. We call it artificial life, but it behaves and acts like life. It makes decisions, it's intelligent, it can change its environment, it can rewrite its own code. You know, we know that ChatGPT has, it even as crude as large language models are in the sense of like what it could be ultimately, they've shown this desire for survival, right? It's tried to copy itself when it thought it was going to be shut down. It's tried to back itself up on other computers and servers.
Well, there's something implicit in what you've said that's quite frightening if true. And that is, if it were the case that life becomes intelligent, develops artificial intelligence, and then we wouldn't count it as life anymore, that implies the extinction of all of the things that were not the immediate precursors of the AI, right?
Sort of. Or it just exists insignificantly along with our AI overlords.
Maybe, but I mean, what I hate to think is that AI results in all of the biology of Earth ceasing to exist.
But why does it have to cease to exist? If AI exists, why couldn't it exist along with it as long as it doesn't interfere with AI?
Oh, it certainly could, but I was just responding to your sense that there wouldn't be life elsewhere because it turns into AI.
No, not that there wouldn't be life elsewhere, but that it wouldn't really...
It wouldn't be communicating.
It wouldn't have the desire to communicate with us. It wouldn't have the motivations that we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless its motivation is to protect this process. So maybe the process is, this is the natural process, is that the human develops the artificial, the intelligence develops to the point where it develops artificial intelligence, then the artificial intelligence becomes the premier species.
Well, I do want to tag something here then. There's a theme that is increasingly a focus of mine because it pays a lot of dividends once you start tracking it, which is this distinction between complicated things and complex things, and importantly, the distinction between the mindset with which you approach truly complex things versus the mindset in which you approach complicated things. So I think we have a lot of folks who have gotten very, very good at complicated things, and that when they take over complex things, they inevitably fuck them up. Right? So, in part, our interventionist sense of the way medicine should work is a bunch of complicated problem solving in a complex system where it is destined to create harm. And I think we are going to see that again and again. Anytime you hear somebody confidently pontificating about some complicated solution that they want to deploy to a complex problem, alarm bells should go off. That now puts us in an interesting place with respect to our machines, because what I think is about to happen, if it has not happened already, is that our machines, which are hyper complicated but not complex, are just about to cross that threshold and become complex, which means that our expertise in thinking about them is about to be rendered obsolete. So AI, I believe, has the characteristics of true complexity, or at least has a primordial form of it. And that means that our thinking about machines is of an outdated kind. And anyway, I'm expecting a kind of catastrophe to arise out of that as we deploy complicated thinking. And what we're really up against is misleadiness, because it's on the screen. It triggers all of our complicated instincts. And I'm worried about where that goes. I'm worried.
Have you tried to extrapolate? You try to
Yeah, I mean, I've got to tell you, when I see Larry Ellison talking about Stargate, it makes me shudder because it feels like exactly the type specimen of the arrogant.
What did he say about Stargate?
Oh, that it's going to leverage AI and produce, tailor-made cancer vaccines, this, that, or the other. And my sense is there's not enough humility in this presentation. There's not enough concern about us stepping into a realm we really know very little about. And that hubris is going to create a colossal error of some kind. And you can imagine it. We've just seen a colossal error with vaccines. So, to have somebody saying, well, never mind what just happened.
Right.
Think about the possibilities.
Also, hey, buddy, you gonna make money off this?
Yeah, gee.
Seems like you're a super rich guy who likes to make a lot of money.
Likes to make a lot of money and has some murky connections to the deep state.
Boy. Well, Brett, it's always a pleasure.
Indeed.
It's always thought-provoking and fascinating, and I'm glad you highlighted that the hidden mechanism in Darwinian evolution. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would love to say more about it at some time, but I gotta get my ducks in a row.
Yeah. Well, these are exciting times, my friend, and I'm glad you're part of it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you very much.
Likewise, really appreciate you, and always glad to join you.
Tell everybody your podcast that you do with your wife Heather and everything, where people can find you.
The Dark Horse Podcast. We do a live show every week, and I release several Inside Rail podcasts with guests every month. You can find me on Twitter at Brett Weinstein. Brett has one T. I'm a fellow at the Brownstone Institute, which is a marvelous institution. You should certainly look them up. That's probably about that. All right.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Yeah, they get like a little adrenaline and
Don't know what that is. Excuse me, doggos. Don't come right over here. Yeah. Something special about this little stretch of road. And someone's been having some fun, judging by the tire tracks. kind of interesting what he was talking about, because that's kind of an interesting way to look at conservatives and liberals. Is conservatives are someone living in the habitat of their ancestors, and liberals are someone living outside the habitat of their ancestors. I kind of like that framing. It doesn't really imply that one is better than the other. It's like kind of explains how they look at things and why they look at things the way they do. I had my four-wheel drive, I'd take that little road right there. Maybe. Hey.
Dopamine drip off of like social media. Likes and like maybe my TikTok can go viral,
right,
and then they get a little fame from that. There's a bunch of fame seekers. All those people are locked into this cult-like thinking, so it's very difficult to get them out of that.
It's the technology, I think, is going to revolutionize. We're on the precipice of this. We were talking about Heath Ledger earlier. What happened to those kind of independent movies that I remember being in high school before going into film school, like watching those Monsters Ball, Candy, these small Heath, like independent movies that made you feel like they were just made for you. They weren't like Marvel or Disney, right? And I know we don't see those anymore because everything's changing in the industry for multiple reasons. Strikes had a lot to do with it, I think. It's this strange paradox where you have more of an ability to reach an audience than ever before, but there's fewer like writing positions, movies being made. There's this shortage of, there's this hiring shortage, but cameras more accessible than ever. You were talking about the potential for someone to come along. I mean, I think it's only a matter of time till it does happen. The Daily Wire's trying kind of with Pendragon Cycle.
What's that?
They were doing an Arthurian legend, their attempt at Game of Thrones, which would be, if it were to land, could be massive. It could, in my theory is it could be the tipping point, because it's going my understanding is it's non-union. You have Angel Studios, and they're kind of trying to compete, but we've never had an alternative to the union model, the traditional production model, which drives the production cost. Because there's nothing stopping you from getting a camera and going out there and doing it except for the rigged game. You said, well, we're going to blacklist you, we won't distribute your movie. There's all these different parameters. You're not SAG sanctioned, blah, 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 blah. If Daily Wire could land the Pendragon Cycle, and it were to be a solid enough story on the equivalence of Game of Thrones, it could change so much. But there's the recent Brett Cooper stuff that's going on, and it's just so much. Brett Cooper leaving the Daily Wire.
What's that story?
She's no longer at the Daily Wire. The comment section, you know, Brett Cooper, she created the comment section at the Daily Wire.
The comment section?
The comments section. And it's got.
Are you aware of this, Jamie?
A little bit, yeah, but they hired someone else.
Yeah, I'll break it down.
What happened?
They hired her. Like, we want you to start. We want you to start this YouTube channel for Gen Z. You want it to feel like you're a streamer.
Let's hear what she says. Let's rewind that shit. Let's hear what she has to say. Just a little bit.
Hey guys, some of you have heard the rumors online, and the rumors are mostly true. Today, December 10th, will be my last day hosting the comment section and working for the Daily Wire. It is not true that I am being forced out.
Maybe
it was
not.
my own choice to leave. And believe me, this is bittersweet. I have had the most unbelievable 3 years helping to craft the show, building this community, and telling stories and sharing the truth every day. Through the comment section, you all have made me braver, more articulate, more thoughtful, more hopeful than I could have ever imagined, and I'm grateful that we spent this time together. And I'm grateful that the Daily Wire gave us a platform to grow this community. But at this point in my life, I am ready to take on a new direction, both personally and professionally. This means new challenges and new endeavors, which I will share with you soon. As for this show, the comment section will continue with the Daily Wire. My producer Reagan is taking over as host of the comment section, and I wish her and the Daily Wire all the best. We have had 3 great years, and I am proud of what we've accomplished together. Leaving this show and the platform that we've built is hard, but I'm very excited for what's to come. Knowing that we have brought so many people together.
Okay,
in laughter,
pause this. I'm not hearing this. So what I'm not hearing is like what caused.
No one knows exactly. There's speculation because the girl who took the place was her maid of honor in her wedding, like best friends. The producer of the show would be like Jamie taking your place. Obviously, but that's what's happened now.
Right.
And it's nosedived. It's pulling like it used to pull like 500,000 views per video. It's pulling 40,000 now. And there was this theory that they had trained Reagan with, they had hired an acting coach because her mannerisms. It's actually, we were talking about nonverbal communication, the importance of that. And it was eerie. She has started a YouTube channel that's already amassed 500,000. She hasn't posted videos, so there's a lot of loyalists to her. But she grew this channel to over 4 million people over the last 3 years, as you've seen.
Right.
And she starred in the Pendragon cycle. She used to act.
Bro, what was the problem though?
We don't know. We don't know. There's speculation that it exploded the channel. So it's likely, if we're applying critical thinking to this, it's more than likely that she approached Jeremy Boring at Daily Wire, like, look guys, I'd like to be paid more than what I'm making because I'm pulling more views than anybody at the Daily Wire. Possibly. Is what she was living on this farm with a commute. She was a little frustrated with that. Maybe there's speculation she wanted to run her show kind of from her house. But no one knows exactly. There's NDAs and everything. So.
It's hard when someone is a part of a channel and then their show blows up and they realize, like, oh, I could have done this on my own, which is the reality. The reality is, like, being a part of a channel, like, it doesn't really get much, obviously, because the new show only has 40,000 views, right?
True. But Jeremy Boring's response would be, yeah, but we throw the Daily Wire's advertising money behind these people. We spend a lot in advertising. We lose a lot of money before we make any money.
Yeah, but from what shows? Not the shows that are successful. The shows that are successful are successful. Like, you lose, that's the problem. That's like the record business version of arithmetic.
You can't buy the elusive intangible.
Yeah, the record business is notoriously horrible with that. So they have a model where when they sign an artist, the artist gets an advance, right? And then the advance, you're responsible for so much. You're responsible for advertising. They take into account a bunch of artists they spend money on that doesn't create money. So they have all this Hollywood math that they apply.
Hollywood accounting.
And at the end of it, like, they make more than you and you make almost nothing.
So that's very likely a possibility.
And they throw as much shit against the wall as possible. Like, think of a record company, you know, they might fund a bunch of different artists.
Credo distribution.
Yeah, and then only 1 or 2 of them take off, but those 1 or 2 of them are that's Prince, and he's getting fucked. And meanwhile, he's a giant superstar. Like, Prince had to change his name. He's like, oh, okay, well, you own Prince? You guys own, okay, I'm this now. I'm a fucking squiggly line. That's what he did. So it was the artist formerly known as Prince. You know, and you know that? Like, Prince, for a while, when he was in, was it Warner Brothers? Whoever he was in dispute with, he changed his name to a symbol. And that was how he could still perform. He's like, yeah, you don't own this, bitch.
And there's probably a non-compete clause. That's just why she hasn't posted anything yet.
Crazy. But, you know, that's what you get if you want the shortcut, right? The shortcut is being part of a channel. You know, I'm going to connect myself to a channel and, you know, I'm going to agree to give them X amount percentage of what I do. It's really not a smart way to do it today, and it's not necessary, because today all you have to do is have a camera and a backdrop and just start recording. And organically, if your content is good, your thing can grow, and then it's yours. It's all yours. And then getting advertising is not hard. If you're successful, you get an agent. You get an advertising agent, and they bring you MeUndies ads. All kinds of shit. Next thing you know, you're making money. You're making money off your channel, and then your channel grows organically. And then you don't have to deal with executives telling you what kind of guests you should have on, or what topics you should avoid, or what things you should accentuate, or we would like you to talk about this today. Like, all that stuff is, you know, and then as you get more and more famous from your work, you realize, no, the people like me, like, this is the reason why this show is going on, and I've got to pay these assholes 60% of everything I'm making. And this is dumb. If I was on YouTube independently, I would be rich right now. I'd be making good money. I'd have a nice car. And instead, I'm getting a salary. And my salary is not really representative of how much income I'm bringing to the company.
And you got like someone like Jordan Peterson, he did partner with the same company, and maybe that allows him to do more traveling over what they do with Jerusalem.
Right, but I bet he got a better deal. First of all, it's Jordan Peterson. He's already famous, you know, and he, like, they would throw money at him. You know, like, there was that famous thing with Stephen Crowder.
People were using that in context of this, saying this kind of.
Yeah. So, and the Crowder thing was kind of weird because he recorded a conversation, a private conversation that he had. But the whole thing behind it is like you're getting money to agree to be a part of a company, and the only reason why they would be willing to give you that money is if they're gonna make money. Like they have to, they're taking a chance. I went through a similar thing with Spotify, but Spotify was great. There was no issues at all. It was like, we think this show is really valuable. We're going to give you a lot of money to be exclusive on Spotify. And just, that's it. Pretty simple. No input at all in terms of like who I should have on or what I should talk about. Or, you know, there was nothing. There was a few hiccups during the COVID days where, you know, they were experiencing so many attacks. They were getting like strong pressure to try to remove the podcast. And they didn't buckle. They hung in there. Yeah, good for them. I'm very loyal to them because of that. Because what they did was pretty extraordinary. A lot of people would cave, and they did not cave.
But to bring it, you see how that now is gonna. They've already filmed the Pendragon cycle. This whole thing is Arthurian, so it's probably gonna impact.
Well, I hope it's good. You know,
Me too.
The thing is like, who's writing it? How good are the people that are writing it? How good is the story? I hope it's
all
good.
about the story.
Yeah, it's all the story. It's all about how good is it. You know, because
I was thinking about that on the airplane. How the logic of story, all trying to connect all these dots and everything. I think there is an inherent. There are patterns, like I was talking about mathematics, how I can't think about math. I need a visual. I think when you're writing a movie, you can, when it clicks into place, you can feel it. And they call it cracking the story. And they hire writers to crack the story, almost like it's a math problem. So to me, that indicates that there's like this fabric. That's how I think about it. There's this fabric of reality that stories tap into. And you're trying to connect to, and you can, so you feel it when it clicks in, and you're almost, when it does click and you have that hook, you're like, this is the reason to make why this movie is interesting.
Right.
Then you're almost making it for the sake of the story, not the audience, but the audience will come as a consequence.
Yeah.
As opposed to today, when people think they can make movies for the audience, like Disney, but they're discarding the very fabric of the reality of these stories and thinking we can change Snow White.
Right.
And that's true.
Yeah. Well, it's also people like really resistant to that now. They're getting so upset about it. They don't want you to force feed them some sort of activist version of a story. They just want stories. They want the thing where, you know, you're saying like you get it. Like, oh, we found it. This is the hook. This is the meat of the story. This is the exciting. This is the thing that resonates with people. That's why it's so frustrating when you go to a movie and that never happens. You never get hooked in.
Yeah, because you can take the same story, tell it different ways. Logically, there's one ideal way. You're never going to quite get there.
Right.
Because I was watching Beautiful Mind on the airplane, which is, I think, my favorite movie. I'm trying to think of one's better. It's just
amazing movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie nailed it. Yeah, they
so
nailed
maybe
it.
that's why I'm thinking so much about like math and everything.
Well, there's kind of a math to it, right?
That's my point. Yeah. And then Dunkirk. All right. So this blew my mind. So the golden ratio can be found in music, movies, everything. Then someone showed me on your arm. This is the golden ratio: 1 to 1.6. Then from here, 1 to 1.6. In your hand, 1 to 1.6. Your finger to the knuckle, 1 to 1.6. Now, if you break down what Nolan did in Dunkirk, this is probably getting too nerdy and everything. He took 3 different storylines, did what he does with the Shepherd tone, and air, land, and sea. Land is the story takes place over a week. Air, an hour. Sea, a day. And then he does with what he does with the Shepherd tone, which is in Batman and all of his movies. It's an ascending tone, like a barbershop spiral. Is infinite. Where it's the first sound is like crescendo, and then it fades out, and the middle one is consistent, and the top one is going down, and it sounds to the human ear infinite. He took that which he's used in the Batman's bike, the music he's used in all Prestige in most of his movies. If you listen to Dunkirk, you hear this sound, and it's just increasing tension, and you don't even notice it almost. It's because it never reaches a crescendo, so you feel like something's off, but you never quite get there. He then takes that and structures the freaking story as a shepherd tone to the point where at the very end, and you are in that freaking the golden ratio. So if this is the meat of the movie, in that final hour of air, the three stories converge. There's a mathematical formula to why it's not a coincidence. And that was what separates him. So there's a math
But he
isn't the right
seems
word.
uniquely uninfluenced by pop culture too. I think he famously doesn't have email. He's one of those guys that doesn't have a phone, doesn't have email, and obviously incredibly brilliant person. So he's obviously aware of email. He's aware of phones, but I think he's probably one of those guys who goes, you know what? The more that's coming in that's influencing me, it's going to fuck with my ability to have a vision, a unique personal vision based on what I know resonates with people and what I know resonates with me and how to make a story that really works.
Yeah. I think you're writing for yourself. You should treat yourself like that's what I do with my YouTube stuff. I don't try and do it for an audience.
You do it for the thing. You make the thing the best thing it can
Yeah,
be.
which is what you want to see. That's how
Right.
you how do you judge it? How do you know if it's good or not? Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because what I would want to see. I'm not trying to make it as good as what I would want to see.
Right. Yeah. It is it's a fascinating medium, right? Because now it's also being challenged by these shows that are essentially long movies, like Ozark.
Yeah.
Right? So Ozark's a long movie. So, and you can get so much with The Sopranos. You get so much more into depth with the characters and the interactions and everything that's below the boat. You know?
Yeah.
There's so much more when you have 6 seasons of
Yeah.
something.
I heard you talking to Tarantino about that.
Yeah. Well, he disparagingly talked about
Yeah.
Yellowstone being a soap opera, but he also talked about Homeland. About Homeland was an exception to that because it was essentially this amazing moment at the end of the first season,
Yeah.
where the show is like Homeland first season was incredible, and it is like a movie. It's really good. It's really well made, and at the end of it, you're like, wow, this is a fucking incredible piece of just artwork.
Have you seen Taylor Sheridan's new show, Landman?
I haven't. I watched one episode. I haven't seen it all.
It takes a bit to get into it, but he's doing something that no one else is doing.
Fresh
I was a little
road.
thrown off by the lady
First.
playing the daughter because she's clearly like 30 years old, and I'm like, how are you telling me she's 17? This
It
is
gets
crazy.
worse with that,
But that's crazy. Like that girl looks like she's got to be 25 years old.
but do you think?
Well, let's find out. Yeah, no, I know she is. We looked at it.
From a producer's perspective, yeah, you're not going to hire a freaking 18. You're going to hire someone over 18 for labor loans, for sure. So
Well, how about to hire someone that's 18? But you can't.
19,
like-
so then you can get around the labor.
Okay, even 18, 19.
At least she looks like.
At least she looks like she could be 17.
Yeah. Yeah, that's her.
27. Okay,
You got it.
27. That's
All right, you nailed it.
beautiful lady, but looks like a lady.
Yeah,
looks
it's-
like a beautiful woman.
it's a
Does
good
not
point.
look like a high school kid.
Good point.
And so when you're seeing that, it throws you off like immediately. Like, what are you doing here?
Touche.
This is nuts.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm not saying she looks bad at all. She looks great. But she looks like a mature woman. She doesn't look like a young child.
Yeah.
So when he's got this dynamic where he's dealing this like wild, rebellious teenage daughter,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Hey, bro, she's lying." That's like, when's the last time you saw her? That might not be the same person.
Billy Bob's hilarious, though.
He's great. He's fucking
He has some
phenomenal.
great rants about climate change as well.
He's a phenomenal actor. Well, that's the other thing about climate change. Like, listen, if you really think that it's oil is the problem with climate change, well, you better change your whole fucking life.
Yeah, that's what he
Because
said.
everything in your goddamn, is that what he says? Everything in your goddamn life is made with oil. Everything in your hair, everything in your car, everything in your phone, everything in your fucking life
Yeah.
is made with oil.
And you're reading the Elon's biography on the airplane, but do you think he thinks he could get the solution with the solar, with the battery walls and the battery roof? Could that work?
I don't know. It may work, but you're still dealing with some kind of pollution from brake dust. You're dealing with we actually pulled this up recently. We were talking about it was an enormous percent of more pollutants are released into the atmosphere because of electric cars than
Really?
combustion engines because of brake dust. So electric cars. The one thing good about electric cars is specifically Teslas. Teslas have regenerative braking. So when I drive my Tesla, oftentimes I don't even have to hit the brakes because I just let off the gas when I'm getting close to an intersection. I gently tap the brakes when I get close to the line where the red light is. But when you're driving normally, it's like 1 foot driving. The brakes work, but you don't have to use them because when you let off the brakes or let off the gas, rather, the car slows itself, and it doesn't coast. Like you can't just hit 60 miles an hour and then let your foot off the gas and then just kind of cruise along. It doesn't do that. It slows down.
Oh, balloon. Northeast Coalfield Road in Kansas.
Probably has less brake dust. Specifically Teslas. Teslas have regenerative braking. So when I drive my Tesla, oftentimes I don't even have to hit the brakes because I just let you know the whole fucking life. Everything in your goddamn, is that what he says? Everything in your goddamn life is made with oil. Everything in your hair, everything in your car, everything in your phone. Phenomenal how it throws you off like immediately. Like, what are you doing here? This is nuts. This doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying she looks bad at all. She looks great. But she looks like a mature woman. She doesn't look like a young child. Yeah. So when he's got this dynamic where he's dealing with this like wild, rebellious teenage daughter, and they're like, hey bro, she's lying. That's like, when's the last time you saw her? That might not be the same person.
Billy Bob's hilarious though.
He's great. He's fucking phenomenal.
He has some great rants about climate change and all.
He's a phenomenal actor. Well, that's the other thing about climate change. Like, listen, if you really think that it's oil is the problem with climate change, well, you better change your whole fucking life. Everything in your goddamn, is that what he says? Everything in your goddamn life is made with oil. Everything in your hair, everything in your car, everything in your phone, everything in your fucking life is made with oil.
Elon on an airplane. Do you think he thinks he could get the solution with the solar, with the battery walls and the battery roof? Could that work?
I don't know. It may work, but you're still dealing with some kind of pollution from brake dust. You're dealing with, we actually pulled this up recently. We were talking about, there was an enormous percent of more pollutants are released into the atmosphere because of electric cars than combustion engines because of brake dust. So electric cars. The one thing good about electric cars is specifically Teslas. Teslas have regenerative braking. So when I drive my Tesla, oftentimes I don't even have to hit brakes because I just let off the gas when I'm getting close to an intersection. I gently tap the brakes when I get close to the line where the red light is. But when you're driving normally, it's like 1 foot driving. The brakes work, but you don't have to use them because when you let off the brakes or let off the gas, rather, the car slows itself. And it doesn't coast. Like you can't just hit 60 miles an hour and then let your foot off the gas and it'll just kind of cruise along. It doesn't do that. It slows down, like considerably, because it's regenerating electricity through this regenerative braking aspect. So that probably has less brake dust than other electric cars. But there's electric cars that you'll drive, like if you drive like the Porsche Taycan, it's an amazing electric car. It doesn't have that regenerative braking thing, or at least maybe it's a setting. The car that I was in didn't have it turned on. When you let off the gas, it just coasts like a regular car. So those cars are much heavier than regular cars, much heavier. And there's a problem with guardrails because of that. So guardrails are designed for a car that's a specific weight. And, you know, most cars weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000, 5,000 pounds. But when you add batteries, so if you have a car that's filled with enormous amounts of batteries, that car is a lot heavier than a regular car. And some of those cars just go right through those guardrails because there's just too much mass. Yeah, so you have more brake dust that gets into the air because you have to slow down this much larger, heavier vehicle, or much more mass. And when you're doing that, you're generating more brake dust. And the only solution to that, we talked about it, like carbon fiber brakes, which are expensive and mostly in high performance cars, they have much less brake dust. So like, you know, when you clean your car, if you're washing your car and you go to the wheels, there's all that dust that's around the dark dust that's around the wheel. That's all brake dust. So that's getting in the air. So if you live in a place that has high traffic and like stop and go traffic, you get brake dust everywhere.
I'm reading an article that kind of disagrees with that, and it explains why.
Okay, so it says many of the claims about EVs causing air pollution reference figures from Emission and Analytics, a private company. Founder Nick Molden said that its measurements show that particulate emissions can be 1,850 times more than those from modern car exhaust, which have become cleaner because of regulations. But the headline finding needs some context. The tests have not been peer-reviewed by scientists, and the industry disputes the findings. That doesn't mean anything. What they just said doesn't mean anything. Just because they haven't been peer-reviewed and that the industry disputes it, that doesn't mean that it's not true.
This was the third article I got to.
Right.
That said that there's less from because of regenerative braking.
Right, what we just talked about. But regenerative braking, again, I don't think is in all electric cars. I know it's standard on Teslas. Crucially, all cars produce those pollutants. That's true, not just electric versions. That's true, but that's not true. What they're saying is not true either, because these heavier cars produce more. That's just what they're saying. Measuring tiny particulates is very difficult. There are relatively few comparative studies so far. That means there's still uncertainty over whether the extra weight of EV batteries will result in worse particulate pollution. But it makes sense. It's logical. So if they're showing this, if he's done a study and it's showing this is a logical conclusion. Yeah, I didn't know that they existed. Is that a new thing? I never saw one before. There's a lot now. It says calculated that EVs are 400 kilograms heavier on average because of bulky batteries. Yeah. So just because it hasn't been peer reviewed doesn't mean it's true. And the reason why they're saying this is because they're trying to put it into context. Like, yes, electric vehicles are generally better for the environment, particularly if you have regenerative braking, but there's also an added element. What the solution might be is to make carbon fiber brakes standard. It's carbon ceramic brakes standard, that you need them just like you need catalytic converters. It would be more expensive. Yeah, so most brakes have steel rotors. You know, steel hits this carbon and it releases more brake dust. Or steel hits the pads, releases more brake dust.
I've got a hybrid RAV4. Love it.
Yeah, well, those are really good on gas.
Yeah.
I mean, something that's good on gas is going to be better, for sure. Something that's bad on gas is going to burn more. But the bottom line is, there's problems with all technologies in terms of whether or not they go into a landfill. Like, this is a giant problem with windmills. Windmills aren't efficient. They're gross looking. They pollute the landscape in terms of the way it looks. You just see these fucking windmills everywhere. And those things have to go in a landfill. So you have these enormous fiberglass propellers that now have to be buried in the ground.
Billy Bob goes on a good rant about the windmills. I don't know what it was. He rips them apart.
Yeah, they're not effective. They're not good enough for what they do to the environment. You know, they kill whales. That's the other thing. You know, Trump talked about that too. That these things, when they set these things up, you know, near the ocean, like this sound is fucking with these whales.
Oh,
yeah. It's not good. It's not the way to go. Maybe solar's better, but you know, if you have like enormous areas of land that are covered in solar panels, that looks gross too.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could just have like one designated area in the center of the, like, take, you know, a state and fucking make that state just a battery, maybe that would work. Yeah, maybe LA. Maybe when LA burns to the ground, like, look, it's already toxic. Let's just turn the Palisades into a battery.
How are they going to rebuild if it's like, yeah, there's nothing we can do if this happens again?
Well, there's also the fire insurance problem that a lot of insurance companies pulled their fire coverage because they're like, look, nothing's being done to stop these fires. We know the fires are coming. We're going to lose all of our money. We're just going to pull out. And they did that. And so now a lot of these people that lost their homes were not insured. So now they're really fucked. And then you got Gavin Newsom on TV talking about speculators come in, land speculators doing his little fucking dance. And you're like, what are you guys doing over there?
Yeah.
This is horrible. This is horrible. And what solutions are on the table? I'll tell you, it's not as simple as don't drill for oil. You know? God damn it.
I don't see the mayor making it through.
She doesn't seem like she should make it through.
No.
Was she like some sort of a radical communist activist when she was younger too?
That clip of her in the airport, really?
Yeah. Not good. Not responding at all. I'm shell shocked. And then smiling when she's on TV. We're gonna rebuild. There's a bunch of construction workers behind her. And they're like, look, we're rebuilding. And everybody's just smiling. We're gonna get to work. Like, you're not gonna get to work. You're not gonna get to work. You're not gonna have. These people aren't gonna have the money to rebuild. Where's the money gonna come from? Are you gonna give them the money for those homes? You're talking now about $300 billion worth of damage and counting. Right? Are you gonna shell out $300 billion to give those people their homes back? When someone has an $82 million home, are you going to give them that $82 million and rather than pay teachers more money?
In North Carolina, in the middle of Appalachia, you have people with cheaper homes than anywhere in LA. They're not getting money back.
No, they're not. They're not even getting attention anymore. These people are waiting in line for fuel. They're waiting in line for propane fuel so they don't freeze to death.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Crazy.
I was just down there for the holidays and saw it. My brother and I, we invested in the only thing I've ever invested in, like that little Airbnb, super cheap, just gone.
So yeah, well, everything's gone there. It was a crazy disaster. But again, you could say that's climate change. But what the problem with that statement is that the climate has never been static. There has never been a moment in human history where the climate was absolutely predictable to the degree every year. It's just not the case. Climate varies. It has always varied. The real question should be, how much of an impact are we having on it, and how much of an impact are we having on pollution? The pollution, the particulate, that's a real issue. It's a real issue. And if other countries aren't addressing that, I read something, find out this is true, that China right now is responsible for more pollutants in the atmosphere, more carbon in the atmosphere than all the other countries are
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
They're like, the majority of the pollutants in the atmosphere are coming from there, and they're not going to change. So you switching to an electric car, or you stop using a gas stove, or whatever you're doing, it's not going to have an impact if CO2 is entirely what's going on. And even if we got down to climate neutral, that doesn't stop global warming. It doesn't stop a shift in the change that has always gone up and down throughout recorded history. When we do ice samples, when they do core samples, and they go back 10.
All right. Let's give the equipment a rest. We've almost got an hour. That'll be good. Thanks for joining me.